I love corn, and I love popcorn. Did you know that the Aztecs threw ears of popcorn into the fire, then collected the pop grains? Or, if time permitted, they heated stones in the fire, then spread a layer of popcorn on the flat surface. Corn is the most hybridized of any major plant in the world. It can grow in more places than any other plant, from the polar regions to the hottest rainforest. And more popcorn is eaten in the fall than in any other time of the year. There are 5 strains of corn on the family tree: sweet, dent, flint, pod, and popcorn. The first 4 are essential to world nutrition. 23% of all arable land in the world is used to grow corn. Their country cousin, popcorn, is grown on less than half of 1% of those acres. It's less productive, and the kernels and ears are smaller, but it is the only one that pops. But what makes it pop? See, the popcorn kernel has a hard shell, and when it dries, microscopic droplets of water are sealed inside of it. If a kernel is heated above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, the water inside boils and turns to steam, creating internal pressure. When the pressure reaches about 135 to 165 pounds per square inch, the kernel explodes or pops. It literally turns inside out as the soft white interior bursts out. Popcorn is native to the Americas. Corn cobs dating back to 5600 BC have been found in excavations in a bat cave in New Mexico. And Native Americans believed that a tiny demon lived in each kernel, and when the demon's house was heated, the demon became so angry that it exploded. And in another version of this, the demon escaped in the explosion. Popcorn was introduced to European settlers at the first Thanksgiving in 1621. Chief Massasoit's brother arrived with a deerskin sack of popcorn. It was part of the feast, but the next morning some was left over, so the pilgrims ate it with milk and sugar for breakfast. And they had no way of knowing that they had just eaten the very first puffed breakfast cereal. Settlers learned about popcorn from each other and from local Native American tribes. For 250 years it remained a homegrown treat, not a national phenomenon. Farmers planted a few rows of popcorn for their children or to share with their neighbors, and at first they called it popped corn, parching corn, or rice corn. And finally, around 1820, it became popcorn. Locally, it bore other names. I know that in Lincoln, Michigan, a friend of mine that I used to take care of as a home health aide grew up on a farm in the Depression era. And they called it magic corn instead of popcorn, magic corn. And he remembered and told me that his grandparents would pick the popcorn, the cob, hang it up in their attic, and let it dry and ripen there to a very hard consistency or texture. And he recalled it being a treat when his grandmother would take him by the hand and take him upstairs and let him select a cob of magic corn to take down to the kitchen, where she would fire up the wood-burning stove and pop the corn to my friend's delight. But it wasn't until the 1880s that popcorn moved from the family kitchen to the public market. In 1885, C. Crestors and Company of Chicago patented a popcorn machine. Soon street vendors were selling bags of popcorn all over the country. In 1893, Chicago celebrated its 100th birthday with the World's Fair, the Columbian Exposition. The firm of F.W. Reichenheim and Brother opened several booths at the fair selling a new treat made of caramelized popcorn and peanuts. When the fair closed, he decided to package and sell it on a national market. He called it Cracker Jack, contemporary slang for something first-rate. Before long, says food historian John Mariani, Cracker Jack was a staple at baseball games throughout the Americas. And it is part of the memory of most children of America, because at some point or another, you got a box of Cracker Jacks. For the tasty treat, but also for the prize that was inside. I remember going to McGregor's drugstore in Bridgeport when I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, walking over there and plopping down my nickel to get a box of Cracker Jacks, and before I would eat the Cracker Jacks, I would stuff my hand all the way down into the box to find the toy surprise that was therein. Usually my hand was sticky by the time I pulled it back out, but I loved the Cracker Jacks, but I think I loved the toy surprise in them just about as much. Over the next 20 years, a number of other innovations kept popcorn interesting for vendors and consumers. For example, in 1914, an Iowa farmer developed a new strain of popcorn that left only about 2% of the kernels unpopped. Until then, as much as 30% of the kernels were duds. The more efficient popcorn made it possible for vendors to keep selling bags at 1 to 5 cents each and still to turn a profit. And in 1918, a company named Butterkist added a new twist, and a lot more calories too. Their popcorn machines squirted melted butter on the popcorn after it was popped. It's really hard to remember or to think of a time where popcorn didn't have butter and salt added to it, because I'm sure it was a treat, to those who originally ate it without. But my goodness, it is so good with melted butter on it. Absolutely, absolutely awesome. Today, popcorn is synonymous with moviegoing, but for a while, the theater owners resisted the idea. In the early 1920s, during the reign of silent films, street vendors would park their popcorn machines outside theaters, and movie patrons would buy a bag or two before entering the theater. At first, owners objected because they had to clean up the mess. Some even refused to let customers bring popcorn into their theaters. But disgruntled movie buffs simply walked to another theater with less rigid standards. Now, the lesson wasn't lost on an enterprising popcorn entrepreneur in Chicago. He developed a commercial popper and convinced several theater owners that they could make a profit by installing it in their lobbies, and the profits would more than pay for the cost of cleaning up the mess. And he was right, of course. In fact, some historians credited popcorn with saving the movie industry during the Great Depression. Money was so tight that theaters had to resort to gimmicks to attract customers, like Dishes Night, where you'd receive a free dish, and Ladies Night, where girlfriends and wives got in free. And to cut the profits so deeply that without the extra revenue, the popcorn stands, many theaters would have closed. To a lesser degree, the same condition prevails today. About $3 of every $4 the customer pays for a movie ticket goes to the distributor, although there's a sliding scale, and that if the movie is popular enough to have an extended run, the percentage to the distributor is reduced. Often, the difference between a profit or loss for the theater is the sales of food. Popcorn accounts for 35% of all sales at the refreshment stand. Now, popcorn was still a long way from being an international agribusiness in 1941 when a 34-year-old Purdue-educated agronomist named Orville Redenbacher decided to make popcorn his life's work. His idiom was, "Learn one thing, but know it better than anyone else." The self-proclaimed king of popcorn began a series of cross-breeding experiments to increase the fluffiness. Up to that time, the popped grain was 15 to 20 times the size of the uncooked kernel. Redenbacher's new strains of popcorn doubled that. They had a volume of 40 times the original kernel. And for the next 3 decades, Redenbacher continued his pursuit of the perfect popcorn kernel. At least 5 new strains were developed and tested. Finally, in 1960, he announced his ultimate discovery, a new strain he had labeled gourmet popcorn. Redenbacher tried to sell it to large food companies, but no one was interested. Finally, he decided to market it himself. He planned to call it Redbo, a combination of his name and his partner's name, Bowman. But a consulting firm insisted that he use his own name and photo instead. So Orville Redenbacher Gourmet Popcorn was first sold at the Marshall Fields department store in Chicago. 5 years later, it was the leading brand in the United States, and popcorn had been reborn as a sophisticated snack. Redenbacher was so closely identified with popcorn that when his company was sold to the giant Hunt Weston conglomerate, they kept his name on the package. In 1980 to 1990, 2 consumer products combined to double America's popcorn consumption: the microwave oven and the VCR. People were starting to watch movies at home, and when Pillsbury invented microwave popcorn in 1982, it was suddenly simple to make popcorn a part of that experience. Another invention which predated the microwave, though, was the Jiffy Pop, where you'd have the popcorn in you bought it in like a foil pan, and it had kind of the top that was on it was like, I don't know what you'd call it. But anyways, you'd put it on the burner, and you'd start shaking it with the handle, and it would start to pop, and all of a sudden this big aluminum ball formed on top of the Jiffy Pop pan, and you had fresh popcorn. And that was amazing, because it was as much fun to watch Mom and Dad make popcorn with that as it was to actually eat it. And I remember when that first came out, and Mom and Dad bought one at Ray's Food Fair in downtown Saginaw, and when we tried it, we were all just like totally in awe and amazement. It was so much fun to watch. But anyways, a year later, Redenbacher developed the first shelf-stable microwave popcorn. Pillsbury came out with the first microwave popcorn, he explained, but it had to be refrigerated to preserve the fat and everything that's in there to pop it with. Shelf-stable meant that we could put it on a shelf for a minimum of 7 months without spoiling. And this shifted popcorn consumption back to where it all started, the home. And today, about 90% of retail popcorn sales are microwave popcorn. Now here's a few facts that perhaps you didn't know. Americans today eat, are you ready for this, 17.3 billion quarts of popcorn a year. The average American eats about 68 quarts a year. About 70% of all popcorn is prepared and eaten in the home. Most of the remaining 30% is sold at movies, sports events, and entertainment events. A popped kernel will form either a snowflake shape, popped big and shaped like an unruly cloud, or mushroom shape popped into a ball. Newly harvested popcorn is better than old corn. The water content is higher, which means more of the kernels will pop. One way to preserve moisture content, keep popcorn in the refrigerator in an airtight container. According to the Almanac of Food, 4 cups of air-popped plain popcorn have only 92 calories with 1 gram of fat. If oil is used, the calories and fat content more than doubles. Nutritional content is 71% starch and other carbohydrates, 10.5% protein, 3% fat, and sprinkling of vitamins and minerals, and up to 14% water. So these are a few interesting facts and a little bit of historical background on what is one of America's favorite snack foods and has been for a long time, popcorn. Hey, thanks for taking a listen.